Hello, Maddie, also known as Hello Interloper here. Today we're going to be talking about the Trial of Ascension normal mode and generally discuss what Trial of Ascension is, how to build a team, some tips and tricks on how to get through it, and just generally introduce you to Trial of Ascension and hopefully get you through all the way. So let's start with a little background info about TOA. Trial of Ascension, ascension meaning going up, is basically a tower. And you start at level 1 in this tower, which is a very easy stage to beat, and it gets progressively harder as you progress through this tower, finally culminating in a big boss fight on level 100. Now, one thing to note is that the final boss is one or another, is either a male boss or a female boss. They do have different strategies, but I'm not going to be going over the level 100 boss fights yet. This is more of a general walkthrough on how to get through the entire tower, actually get to that point in the first place. So, Trial of Ascension is unlocked at player level 15, and you're going to have a lot of time to beat it because it resets about every 30 days. This gives you plenty of time to work on your runes, if you need to, work on evolving your monsters, awakening, whatever you need to do in order to strengthen your team and get further in Trial of Ascension. The floors and bosses are rearranged every time that's reset, and sometimes new floors or bosses are introduced as new monsters are introduced to the game. It's also pretty cool to note that you'll see a lot of transmogrified monsters while you're traversing the different floors of TOA. There's also a hard mode, which is a little bit different in the sense that it is harder and there are different strategies and monsters that do better in hard mode. But in general, we're not going to be really talking about that, and some of the monsters I will be mentioning aren't as useful in hard mode. So, TOA, the main reason for doing it at least, is you get a bunch of extra goodies, and you can get mystical scrolls, tons of crystals, and the crowning achievement when you beat level 100 is you get a legendary scroll, which is awesome. You have a chance of getting a Nat 5, but most of the time you'll get a Nat 4, which is still great because there are so many good Nat 4s in the game. Even if you don't get a Nat 4 that you can use, it will likely be food for another element of that Nat 4. Now, it's really important to note that you cannot revive your team in TOA. You pretty much have a shot at it, and if you can't beat it, you can't beat it. You gotta strengthen your team, and you cannot use friend reps. This is entirely dependent on you and your team. That's why team building is so important. So let's go over the actual goodies you can get, because even if you can't make it all the way, you want from the very beginning of the game to try to make it as far as you can during those 30 days, just so you can get some extra stuff to help you along in the game. When you beat a normal stage like 1, 2, 3, or 4 in Trial of Ascension, you get one summoning stone as a reward. Every 5 stages, like stage 5, stage 15, stage 25, etc., you will get crystals. This amount varies. Stage 10, you'll get 50 energy instantly right off the bat so you can continue and go further in Trial of Ascension. Or you can use it for dragons, giants, whatever you choose. But it does give you that instant energy boost, which is really nice. Stage 20 gives you a 3-star max rainbow mon. Stage 30 gives you 1 mystical scroll. Stage 40 gives you 100 crystals. Stage 50 gives you 2 mystical scrolls. Stage 60 gives you a Rainbow Mon 4-star max, which is the same that you get from guild rewards. Stage 70 is a Devilmon, which is very, very useful, especially later in the game when you have Nat 5s and you need to skill them up. Stage 80 is Crystal times 300. Stage 90 is a Light and Darkness scroll, which is definitely make or break. You can definitely get some good monsters, but you can also get a lot of duds. Stage 100 is that wonderful legendary scroll, which a lot of people unfortunately call the Scroll of Disappointment, because a lot of time people have high hopes and hope that they get a Nat 5. Sometimes you'll get a Nat 5, sometimes you'll get a fake Nat 5, which is a Nat 5 that is awakened and 5-star. But most of the time you will get a Nat 4, which is just fine, because even if you don't get something you can use, you can get food, which acts as a free Devilmon. Honestly, I could deal with free Devilmons. That's great for me. So let's go a little deeper. For the intro of Team Building 101, so to speak, I will explain my team. And hopefully this will give you a little insight on how many different kinds of utilities go into play in Trial of Ascension. Now, we all know basically a little bit about giants. You know, you want to slow the giant, you want to speed up your team, you maybe want some dots to, continuous damage to kill the giant every time he does an attack. Those are kind of, different utilities that are employed in giants. TOA is a little more complex because you kind of have bit of a crazy mashup of monsters going on. Every stage has a different set of monsters, of different elements. You never really know what is there. The bosses can sometimes be very difficult and definitely need to be debuffed or your team buffed in order to have the advantage. So, my team right now is Beretta as leader, which gives a speed boost to the entire team. He's on Despair Focus, so he is a stunner. He has AoE damage over time effects, continuous damage, single target attack bar reduction, actually depletion. He can fully deplete somebody's attack bar if it lands, which is quite nice if you want to try to control the battlefield a little and prevent a very strong monster from hitting your team, or let's say that one of your team members is dying and let's say Beretta is dying and I don't want a water monster to hit him. I can deplete their attack bar, hopefully they won't attack, but it's harder to hit a water monster with a debuff if you're a fire guy, I've noticed. Anyway, Veramos is Fire Ifrit, Beretta being Fire Sylph, of course, and is fusible, which is quite nice. Veramos is also fusible, and I would say very, very useful for TOA. If you do not have Veramos, get him because he's useful all around. But I have him on Violent Blade. Preferably, I would like to have him on Violent Focus, but I'm still farming dragons to get the right focus runes. He is a stunner because he has an AoE stun ability, even without Despair. He's a cleanser because he takes away a debuff from the entire team every turn. And he also has a basic attack that applies continuous damage, so he has single target damage over time. So I have 2 guys so far that do damage over time, actually 2 total. But as you can see, I already have 2 stunners. It's pretty complex. You want to try to debuff, kill, but also stun the other team so you don't get hit that much. Then for my AoE healer, and I highly recommend a healer for TOA, there are some people who can get through TOA without a healer, and those are probably people who have a very advanced team. A lot of stuns, really good runes, high accuracy, have done TOA many, many times before. If you're a beginner, you definitely need an AoE heal. Belladon is a great healer for this. I have mine on Swift Focus, although preferably you'd like to have him on Violent. He has an AoE heal, and that AoE heal also has an attack bar boost, which will make your team hit sooner. Has a defense break basic attack, so basically I can break somebody's defense, whether it's a boss or a monster, and then send all my other monsters after him, and also he can strip buffs from a single target with Seize. Then I have Vertiheal, who I have on Swift Blade, preferably Violent Blade or whatever, as long as you have 100% crit rate, but I just don't have the Violent runes, so I do have Swift. It works just fine. I've gotten to TOA 100. I beat TOA 100 twice. It's fine having them on Swift. But he gives an AoE attack bar boost, basically boosting the entire team, more hits, wonderful. Unfortunately, he is pretty hard to get. The best way to get him, or to get Brienne, the next monster I'm going to be talking about, is to save up your summoning stones. And you do get summoning stones from TOA, which is awesome. Save up your summoning stones for 4 stars you really, really want, and then summon all at once. I know it's really tempting to summon as soon as you have 50 summoning stones, but the best thing you can do is save them for something you really need. It can really change the direction of the game. Briand is my final team member, and he's on Despair Energy, so he's my 3rd stunner. I have 3 AoE stunners. definitely need lots of stuns for TOA. It really changes the tide of battle. He also has an AoE attack break, single target unrecoverable with his basic, and he has a revive that also includes an HP balance among all of the party members, which is kind of nice because, you know, you can save somebody who's really hurt as well as revive somebody. But of course, you know, it does technically even out everything, so it could drastically lower everybody's HP and make them susceptible to being hit. It's kind of something you have to use at the right time. Now, one thing I really have to stress is that although this is my main TOA team, this isn't my team for every stage and every boss. And I say this because there's some bosses, especially Wunsa, which is a dark pioneer and has dark monsters alongside him. I wouldn't want to use Belladon on that stage because Belladon would get absolutely smashed. That's why I usually have switch-ins. And I call them switch-ins because I'll occasionally switch out one of my team members and put one of these guys in for certain situations. It's always good to kind of have extra monsters to switch into your team, which is why I always stress building lots of different monsters. Don't be focused on one team. You want to have a nice variety and be able to switch in things that you need when you need them. So my main switch in for healing is Colleen, because she's fast. I have her on Swift Focus. Preferably I'd like to have her on Violent, but you know, like I said, I don't have good Violent runes. She provides an AoE heal, an AoE attack buff, single target unrecoverable, and single target attack break. Generally, she's a pretty good replacement for Belladon. And definitely for Wunsa stage or stages with a lot of dark monsters, I will sub in Colleen. Tyrone, Tyrion, however you want to say it. Sometimes I'll switch him in for somebody else. Might switch Beretta for him. It depends on what I'm fighting. But he's also on Despair Focus, so he's a stunner. He's also has an AoE freeze and AoE glancing hits, which can be pretty useful. I do have Chiwu, and I know a lot of people don't have Chiwu, but I felt like it was important to show my entire team, kind of give a little bit of perspective on what you might someday get. But Chiwu was also on Despair Focus, so he's another stunner. Sometimes I will sub him for Beretta because he's also a speed leader. He actually provides more speed than Beretta, but unfortunately Beretta provides so much continuous damage that I really need Beretta for most stages. But I will take Chiwu when I need buffs to be stripped. He has an AoE strip buff stripper. He has an AoE that strips the enemy's buffs. That's what I meant to say. And a single target buff block. He also has single target sleep. It's a small chance on his basic attack, but it still can be pretty useful. And sometimes I'll bring in Chloe. Right now she's Swift with 2 runes that don't make a set because I just don't have an energy, an HP percent rune to put on her. I would love for her to be Swift Will, but I just don't have that. She has a 2-target heal, AoE invincibility, and AoE immunity, which can be kind of useful on bosses that debuff the hell out of you. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what my team is and how my team works. I will usually switch out somebody, switch somebody in. Most of the time I will either switch out Beretta, I'll switch out Brienne, and occasionally on bosses that I just can't seem to beat no matter what I do, I will switch Veramos to be the leader for the 33% HP buff. Sometimes speed is not the key, although in most cases it is. Sometimes you just need a little more HP to endure a little more damage and you can make it through. So let's discuss a little more about team building. There are a lot of important mechanics and stats that you need to work specifically on. You need HP percent for survival. If you are ruining monsters, you do not want, quote, flat stats for slot 2, slot 4, and slot 6, unless it is speed. There is no speed percent rune. Flat stats are plus, 500 HP, or plus something defense. Slot 1, slot 3, and slot 5 are all flat stats and cannot be changed. They will always be flat stats. But 2, 4, and 6 is what gives you a lot of freedom to choose. Flat stats on those slots are not good. You want to go for percentage, like HP percent, defense percent, attack percent, crit damage percent, accuracy percent. Speed will always be a flat stat. Keep that in mind. Without going into too much detail, you definitely would like a lot of HP percent for survival. Speed is for debuffing the enemy team, or using stuns, or using anything before they hit you. You want AoE stuns and continuous damage, because continuous damage takes 5% of the enemy's HP per turn. So if you have 2 continuous damage effects and the enemy takes a turn, that's 10% of the HP knocked off. It adds up over time and does a lot of damage. You want Despair, Violent, and Swift runes for most of your monsters, because Despair means stuns. You want to use Despair on AoE monsters, area of effect monsters, monsters that have abilities that affect the entire enemy team. You want Violent to get extra turns, or Swift to get turns faster. Ideally, a lot of monsters do very well on Violent, but let's face it, we can't all farm Violent runes very well, and also they drop pretty badly. I mean, I've been doing dragons for a while, I just can't seem to get Violent runes, but I get tons of shield runes. I don't know what to do with all of them. Sometimes Swift is just easier to get. Let's talk about some great healers. If you need a AoE healer, which you most likely will need, these are some really good ones. Now, of course, I'm not going to be going over all of the monsters you can possibly use for TOA, just give suggestions. Some great healers: Belladine. Belladine has an AoE heal, attack bar buff, a defense break, basic attack, and buff removal with C's. Belladine overall is high utility, good heals, just generally a very good monster. Also, because Belladine is light, that means not many elemental disadvantages, unless of course you're facing dark monsters. Ariel is a 5-star monster, water archangel, whatever. Most likely you do not have our Ariel, but if you do, you're in for a treat, because Ariel has 2 heals, a buff removal basic attack, and has an AoE heal over time buff, which is really nice. Chasun, however you want to say her name, she also has 2 heals, and a glancing hit basic attack, which is nice. She also has an ability that balances out HP, and one thing to note with the HP balance is that you can circumvent or go around the unrecoverable buff. See, unrecoverable buffs only work to block heals. They don't block heal balances. So her Fallen Blossoms ability basically will either make someone else's HP heal her, or her HP heal someone else. So let's say she has full HP and she uses it on somebody with low HP, she will give that high HP to the low HP guy as well, and also boost her attack bar. So it's a really, really useful ability, especially for saving people who are dying. Colleen is also a really great monster. I've mentioned her before in my switch-ins. She has an AoE heal and attack buff. She has an attack break basic attack and an unrecoverable debuff that she can apply. And lastly, Lulu does not get enough love. Lulu is a great starter healer, especially for TOA. If you are low level, definitely build a Lulu for TOA, because she has 2 heals. One is an AoE heal, and the other one heals herself and somebody else. She has a self-attack bar boost as basic attack, and her AoE heal clears 2 debuffs off of everyone. That is key. She can help the entire team clear debuffs. Also, she has pretty low cooldowns for her heals, which makes her a really good Trial of Ascension monster. Honestly, I don't know why a lot of people poo-poo her. If you hear people poo-pooing her, don't listen. She is really good for TOA. I've heard people 6-star her and beat TOA with it. So, don't listen to the haters. So, stuns with Despair. There are so many monsters you can put Despair on, but here are some of my personal recommendations for applying Despair. First of all, Mantura. Mantura I want to give a special mention to because Mantura used to be used to not be that great. And he recently got buffed maybe about a month or two ago, and now he is the bomb. And I will explain why. First of all, he's a dark monster, meaning of course his only weakness is light. He also has 2 AoE attacks that are based off of his HP. He is a very HP based monster, meaning he's also very tanky. He has an AoE attack speed debuff, an AoE defense break, AoE dots, and his basic attack is a buff stripper, which is absolutely awesome. He just generally is a great monster to put Despair on and stun the hell out of everyone, along with applying lots of other debuffs. Briand is also a great monster on Despair because he has an AoE attack break, and he also has other utility as well. The unrecoverable basic, the revive ability with HP balance. He generally is a good guy to put Despair on because you'll have an extra stunner as well as a reviver, and unrecoverable is great in certain scenarios. Now, the star of TOA, as I like to call it, is Beretta, because Beretta is a great stunner on Despair, has AoE dots that last for 3 turns, and has up to 2 applications. So, total, 3 and 3 is 6, times 5, I can do math, I swear, is... I know, I'm sure you guys saw my past video. I completely failed at math. But anyway, that's 30% of the HP taken away. Of course, over 3 turns, but still pretty darn nice. Especially because, you know, if you have a pretty fast Beretta, and of course, that skill maxed, so you get the -1 cooldown reduction, you can use them more often, kill guys pretty quickly. It's nice. Varad, whatever, is the Ice Dragon. Also quite rare, but an amazing stunner. And even if your freezes, your 2 AoE with freezes, I might add, do not freeze, if you put him on Despair, you've got stuns everywhere. And of course, Despair applies to all attacks, so even maybe his basic will stun. He also has an AoE attack bar depletion. He can completely clear somebody's attack bar with one of his abilities, which is great. So he's definitely a good monster to bring into TOA if you have him. Arya is a monster that was recently given away in Hall of Heroes. Even if you were only able to get 1, that's fine. She can do pretty well in TOA because she has an AoE attack speed debuff, AoE glancing hits. Her basic attack has a chance to put the enemy to sleep and also raise her own attack bar. She has another ability that applies unrecoverable, but if an enemy is sleeping and she uses her second ability, that combination can induce a stun. So overall, she's really nice to put Despair on. And of course, Shannon. A lot of people think Shannon is only for giants, and that's completely untrue. Shannon can be great for TOA. A lot of people bring her all the way to TOA 100. It's completely doable, but she will definitely need extra HP % in her runes, her 246, her subs, whatever. She has an AoE attack speed debuff, which is great, and an AoE attack defense buff for your own team. And her basic attack induces glancing hits. I know I've been talking about glancing hits a lot. One thing to note is glancing hits is kind of like if glancing hits sometimes just normally gets triggered by, let's say, okay, you're let's say Beretta. I'll use Beretta as an example again. And A wind monster, which Beretta is strong against, uses an attack. Sometimes that will be a glancing hit because fire is strong against wind. It won't do much damage. So basically, glancing hit really reduces the attack of the opposite monster, as if that monster is weak against your monster, if that makes sense. Either way, glancing hits is great to apply because that means a lot less damage to your team. So a little further, here's some popular utility monsters that I see a lot in TOA teams. A little bit of mouthful there. Spectra is a commonly used monster in both Dragons and in TOA. Also TOA hard mode. Good to note. If you build a Spectra for TOA, you'll definitely carry him over into TOA hard. He has an AoE speed debuff, an AoE attack bar reduction, and he is known as the, quote, boss killer, because one of his abilities does damage based on the enemy's HP. It takes at least 10% of the enemy's HP per hit of that specific ability. It's not as basic. But either way, it's nice to have that extra attack to deplete the boss's HP quicker. Especially if you have a team that isn't really strong attack-wise. Another really popular one is Thrain. Now, Thrain does not have to be put on Despair because he has kind of a combo thing working off of him. He has AoE damage over time, continuous damage, and he has an ability that will cause an AoE stun if combined with continuous damage effects, which is really, really cool. And also, his basic attack gives an extra turn if the enemy dies. So it's great to use his basic attack on guys that are about to die. He's great on Violent, and you definitely want high attack, which is kind of strange for TOA. TOA, you mostly want to be very durable. With him, you want high attack because you want to get that extra turn from killing the monster. Now, Vertiheal, enough said. He has an AoE attack bar buff. Buffs everyone's attack bar, faster attacks, more attacks within a shorter amount of time, good all around. Unfortunately pretty hard to get, just like Thrain. Thrain is from Light and Dark Scrolls. He is a 3-star though, so he's easier to get than most of the 4-stars and 5-stars and whatever. Verde, 4-star, hard to get unless you get him from stones, or, you know, you can get him from mystical scrolls, but it's unlikely, or fire scrolls, which is also unlikely. Best thing to do is save up stones for a week that has him. Darien is thankfully a farmable monster. You can get him on light day. He has a 15% damage reduction on the entire party, which is quite nice. Anything that reduces damage in TOA is a definite yes for your team. He has a defense break basic and an attack break debuff ability as well. So he's pretty handy. And also Hua. Now, a few videos back I did a comparison of Spectra and Hua. This is pretty cool because this is something that Spectra and Hua can work together in, and actually work together very well, especially for taking down bosses. Hua has an attack speed debuff on basic attack, single target damage over time, also known as continuous damage with one of her abilities. She has a passive that reduces the attack bar of the enemy and has a 20% chance to hit again. Now, she's mostly used for controlling boss fights. By using her attack bar reduction abilities, she can make it so the other enemies don't hit as often, and it's really good for, let's say, bosses like Wounsa. A lot of people bitch and moan about the Wounsa boss fight because it's really hard. The Dark Sylphids will hit for a lot and heal the entire team, so you definitely want to kill them or at least reduce their attack bar, stun them, anything to prevent them from hitting. So Hua and Spectra are a great way to prevent those guys from hitting, so you can just nuke the boss, if that's the strategy you want to employ, of course. So, those are my recommended monsters. There are a lot of different monsters that can be used for TOA, so don't think that these are the only monsters. These are just the ones that I see used a lot, that I recommend, that I believe are the most useful for TOA. Of course, there are a lot of 5 stars, you know, let's say Lagmaron is used a lot. That's Wind Chimera. You know, I'm not going to go into all the different 5-stars that could be used because that's just too much information, and this is going to be quite a long video. But some general tips and tricks that you should probably know for TOA. A speed leader works best almost all the time. Try switching to an HP percent leader if speed leader didn't work. I do this very often. There's certain boss fights where my team just gets obliterated really fast, but if I switch to an HP leader like Veramos, who gives a 33% HP buff to my entire team, sometimes I can do it. It all depends on the boss. Sometimes you want a lot of speed, sometimes you just want a lot of durability. It depends on how hard they're hitting. If bosses or monsters hit too hard, attack break is your friend. Attack break can literally make or break whether or not you're getting killed. Once again, I'll use the Wounsa fight example. If you don't want to get killed really quickly by the Dark Sylphids, and the Dark Sylphid's going to attack, it's inevitable, you know, you've missed your stun chance, it's going to happen, put on an attack break because you will get hit for a lot less. And I also always keep an attack break on the boss. So attack break is extremely useful and underrated. Most people just want to do, you know, defense break, kill things as fast as possible. Attack break can really increase your chances of survival. Runes are super important. If you don't know how to rune a monster, you can check by asking in chat, which sometimes is not very helpful. You can check online. I recommend that you go to the, I think it's called Summoner's War Sky Arena site, which has a review of monsters and has like star ratings for different monsters and stuff. They have pretty good rune builds. The Wikipedia, Wikia, whatever, for Summoner's War, a lot of their rune builds are really wonky. I mean, I looked up, I think it was Spectra and Hua when I was making my video, and I was just looking at the rune builds going, what on earth am I looking at? They're just, they don't make much sense. Definitely go on the Summoner's War Sky Arena website if you want good rune builds. But definitely work on your runes. You definitely need good runes for TOA. You can always take a break to farm runes if you need to, because TOA doesn't reset for around 30 days. You have plenty of time if you started early. That's the nice thing about TOA, and also the bad thing about TOA. If you have a really good team and can zip through TOA really fast, you're going to be bored because you finished early and you got so many more days until reset. If you're struggling, you have so much time to do whatever you need to do in order to get further. So it's good and bad at the same time. But then again, you can say that's what TOA hard mode is for all the people who beat TOA normal too fast. Some stages might be impossible for you to do unless done fully on manual. A lot of people think, oh, you know what, I'm just going to press auto and see if I beat it or not. That doesn't always work. Especially on bosses, you will probably have to manually do the stage, which is fine. It's not going to kill you. And it's definitely smart to save your AoE and heal cooldowns for the boss fight by conserving them on stage 2. Maybe use them at the beginning of stage 2 and then near the end of stage 2, or when you already know that you're pretty much almost done with stage 2, just switch to basic attacks, just kill them off with basic attacks. Keep in mind that every time you move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, you do get healed a little bit, so you can be a little hurt. You don't have to pop that heal if you don't need to. But basically, conserve your cooldowns for a boss fight, because sometimes you will really need to just use a bunch of cooldowns to get monsters stunned and just get things set up the way you need it to be set up in order to survive and kill that boss. So, basically, that's all you really need to know about TOA. I'm going to be making a few videos over the next few weeks explaining certain boss fights of TOA. Of course, they are on different levels, so sometimes they're varying difficulty, but the strategy remains the same because the abilities remain the same. So I will go through some of those fights and kind of tell you what you should have on your team, what debuff you need to put on what monster, etc. Kind of like what I did with the Wounsa fight video that I did a few weeks ago. So anyway, good luck everybody, and happy Trial of Ascensioning. Good luck.